Have you ever had a plan? I'm not talking about just a little plan, like what you were going to eat for lunch. I mean, a life plan. You mapped it out in your mind. You thought you had it figured out. By this age, you'd be here. By this season, you'd have that. By this time, you'd be further along. And you told yourself, if I just do it this way, if I just work hard enough, if I just stay focused, it's all gonna fall into place. And then it didn't. What do you do when the plan doesn't work? What do you do when you prayed, you planned, you prepared, and the door's still closed? What do you do when you were faithful to the vision, but the vision didn't play out the way you pictured it? See, we love plans. We love control. We love the idea that if we just follow the steps, A plus B equals C. But life has a way of interrupting our equations. Life has a way of throwing a variable into the formula that you didn't see coming. You were ready for success, but you weren't ready for delay. You were ready for promotion, but you weren't ready for rejection. You were ready for open doors, but you weren't ready for locked ones. And that's the moment when your plans stop working, that you discover something deeper. That maybe the point of the plan wasn't to get you to where you thought you wanted to go. Maybe the point of the plan was to get you close enough to God so that when the plan fell apart, His purpose could come alive in you. See, God's purpose is not limited to your plan. Your failed plan is not a failed life. Just because the blueprint you drew up didn't get built the way you imagined, doesn't mean God isn't constructing something better. Sometimes the delay is direction. Sometimes the detour is deliverance. Sometimes the no is not rejection, it's redirection. I came to tell somebody, don't confuse a broken plan with a broken promise. You thought you were supposed to marry that person, but when they walked out, God was actually walking you into freedom. You thought that job was your destiny, but when it fell through, God was protecting you from something you couldn't see. You thought that opportunity was everything, but when the door slammed shut, God was saying, I have something greater. Here's the truth, your plan may stop working, but God never stops working. He's working in ways you can't see. He's aligning things you don't even know about. While you're crying over what fell apart, He's preparing what will fall into place. I know it hurts when the plan collapses. I know it shakes you when you thought you had control and then you lose it. But can I remind you, you were never the author of your story anyway. You were never the one holding the pen. You were never the one holding the world together. You were never the one keeping your heart beating while you slept last night. That was Him. And if He was faithful enough to keep you breathing through the night, He's faithful enough to lead you into what's next. Stop worshiping the plan. Stop idolizing the map. Start trusting the Maker, because sometimes God will let your plan fail just to prove that He is faithful. Sometimes He'll let the door close so that you'll finally stop knocking where you don't belong. Sometimes He'll let the plan unravel so you can see the thread of His grace holding you together. So when your plans stop working, don't panic. Pause, pray. Ask God, if this isn't it, then show me what is. Because the very place you thought was an ending may be the birthplace of a new beginning. Don't despise the closed door. It's proof that God has something better on the other side. Don't let the broken plan convince you you're broken. Don't let the failure of what you pictured stop you from believing in what God has promised. You may not have the plan anymore, but you have the promise. And the promise is that He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will finish the work He started in you. So lift your head, dry your tears. The plan might have stopped working, but the purpose is still alive. When you have a plan and it falls apart, the first reaction most of us have is to feel like everything we hoped for, dreamed about, and worked toward has collapsed with it. We often attach our identity to the plans we've made. We say to ourselves, if this works, then I'll know I'm successful. I'll know I'm chosen. I'll know I have purpose. So when the plan fails, we feel like our purpose failed too. But a failed plan is not a failed purpose. The plans we make are limited by what we can see, what we understand, and what we think will make us whole. Our vision is always partial. We can only map out what looks good from our angle. But God sees the full picture, the end from the beginning, the path we cannot even imagine yet. The failure of your plan doesn't cancel the purpose of God. It only reveals that His purpose was never dependent on your perfect execution, To begin with, think about how many times in your life you thought you knew the way. You thought you knew who you were supposed to marry, where you were supposed to live, what career you were supposed to pursue. You thought if you just followed the script in your head, everything would align. But when those plans didn't work out, you found yourself wondering if you missed it, if you messed it up, if you somehow ruined what God wanted to do in your life. The truth is, His purpose doesn't break because your plan did. His plan isn't fragile like that. Your failed plan may have surprised you, but it didn't surprise Him. He factored your failure into His faithfulness. He already accounted for your detours, your delays, and even your disappointments. That's why a failed plan can never cancel a divine purpose. We sometimes confuse the tools with the outcome. We think the plan was the destination, but the plan is only a vehicle. And if one vehicle breaks down, God always has another one to get you to the destination He designed. Purpose is not tied to one specific route. Purpose is woven into every turn, every curve, every stop along the way. So when the road you mapped out gets blocked, that doesn't mean you won't arrive. It simply means the path you pictured wasn't the only one available. The failure of your plan might even be the protection of your purpose. That closed door you cried about may have been the very thing that kept you from being destroyed by something you didn't see coming. There are countless examples in life where someone's plan failed, but their purpose was never lost. A business owner whose dream company went bankrupt, but later discovered a deeper calling in serving others. A student who failed an exam, thinking their whole future was ruined, but ended up finding a completely new path they were created for. A relationship that didn't last, which at the time felt like the end of love, but later became the space that allowed them to grow into who they needed to be. Every broken plan can become a seed for a greater story, because purpose isn't confined to our human expectations. Purpose is God's design for our lives, and His design doesn't depend on everything going according to our schedule. What makes a failed plan so painful is the way it shatters our illusion of control. We like to think we can map it all out, that if we prepare enough and pray enough, things will go exactly the way we expect. But sometimes the very best thing God can do for us is interrupt the script we wrote for ourselves. Because if the script we wrote always worked, we would start trusting our plan more than His presence. We would start worshiping the idea of control instead of the reality of His sovereignty. And when that happens, our faith is no longer in God's purpose, but in our ability to manage the plan. That's why sometimes God allows a plan to fail, not to hurt us, but to remind us that our foundation was never supposed to be in the plan, but in Him. When we say a failed plan is not a failed purpose, what we're really saying is that God's definition of success is not the same as ours. We think success means everything works out the way we imagine. God thinks success is when everything works together for our good, even if it doesn't look the way we thought it would. We think success means reaching the destination quickly. God thinks success is about becoming who we're meant to be along the way. We think success is about our plans working perfectly. God thinks success is about His purpose being fulfilled through us even when our plans fall apart. That shift in perspective changes everything. It means the closed door isn't failure, it's guidance. It means the heartbreak isn't wasted, it's shaping you. It means the disappointment is not defeat, it's redirection. If you look back on your life, you'll see evidence of this already. There are things you once begged for, plans you once fought for, dreams you once thought you couldn't live without, and today you're grateful they didn't work out. At the time, you thought you lost everything, but now you see it was making room for something better. That's proof that failure doesn't have the final word. Purpose does. That's proof that broken plans are not wasted seasons. They are classrooms. They teach us dependence, humility, resilience, and faith. They teach us that our hope is not in a specific outcome, but in the one who holds the outcomes in His hands. A failed plan is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to realign, to ask deeper questions, to seek God in ways you wouldn't have if everything had gone smoothly. When your plan works, you don't always stop to ask, God, is this really where you want me? But when your plan fails, you are forced to pause and consider, if not this, then what? If not here, then where? If not my way, then His way. And in that searching, you often discover purpose in a way you never could have if your plan had gone exactly the way you wanted. Sometimes the treasure is buried under the rubble of your own plans. And only when those plans collapse can you uncover what God has hidden there for you all along. Purpose has endurance that plans do not. A plan is fragile. It can fall apart with one phone call, one email, one unexpected diagnosis, one betrayal, one closed opportunity. But purpose is resilient because it's not built on external circumstances. It's anchored in eternal truth. Purpose is the thread that weaves through your entire life, even through seasons of disappointment, even through moments of despair. You might change jobs, you might move cities, you might lose friends, you might shift directions, but purpose remains constant. It shows up in every season, every assignment, every unexpected turn. That's why you can have a failed plan and still be right in the middle of your purpose. And here's the beauty of it. Sometimes your failed plan becomes the very testimony that helps someone else discover their purpose. What you thought was wasted becomes wisdom. What you thought was a loss becomes leverage. What you thought was failure becomes fuel for somebody else's faith. Because people don't need to see you execute a perfect plan. They need to see you trust a perfect God when your plan falls apart. They need to see that it's possible to keep going even when things didn't go your way. They need to see that purpose outlives failure and that joy can rise even out of ashes. Closed doors are often divine direction. When we face a closed door, our first instinct is usually frustration. We wonder why, after so much effort, so much prayer, so much preparation, the door won't open. We stand there pushing, knocking, even begging for it to move, and all we hear is silence. In those moments, it is tempting to believe the closed door is rejection, that somehow we aren't good enough, faithful enough, or worthy enough to step through. But a closed door does not mean God has abandoned you. A closed door is often God's way of guiding you toward where you were meant to go, protecting you from what you cannot see and redirecting you into something better than what you planned. The truth is, we don't always know what's on the other side of the doors we want so badly. We see opportunity, status, comfort, or success. We see the picture in our head of what life could look like if only that door opened. But God sees the whole story. He sees the pain that might come with it, the compromise it might demand, or the destruction it could cause. He sees the timing that isn't ready yet, the relationships that need to grow first, or the lessons you haven't learned yet. So when the door doesn't open, it may not be rejection at all. It may be divine redirection, a loving hand pulling you away from harm or delay and steering you toward destiny. Think of how many times in your life you were desperate for something that didn't happen. You wanted the job, but didn't get the call back. You wanted the relationship, but they walked away. You wanted the position, but someone else was chosen. At the time, it felt like failure, like loss, like rejection. But now looking back, you can see how those very moments set you up for something better. You can see how what felt like the end was actually the beginning of something you didn't even know you needed. You can see how the door that didn't open forced you to walk toward one that did. That's the mystery of divine direction. What looks like a denial is often just a detour. We live in a culture that tells us persistence is everything. Push harder, work longer, grind until the door finally breaks open. And yes, there are times perseverance is necessary, but there are also times when God is saying, stop pushing on what I've already closed. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not pushing harder, but stepping back and trusting that if God wanted that door open, it would be open. It takes humility to stop trying to force your way into a place you don't belong. It takes trust to walk away from something you thought was for you and believe that God has something greater prepared. A closed door is not the end of the journey. It's a shift in direction, a course correction towards something more aligned with your purpose. Closed doors also refine our hearts. They strip away the illusion that we are in control. They teach us dependence, patience, and discernment. When a door closes, we are forced to ask questions we might not otherwise consider. Why was I so desperate for that? What was I hoping it would give me? Was I trusting the door more than the one who opens it? Those questions reveal what's really in our hearts. They expose whether we are chasing fulfillment in things or whether we are grounded in God's purpose. Closed doors purify our motives. They push us beyond our shallow definitions of success into a deeper pursuit of meaning. Sometimes a closed door is protection. There are opportunities that look appealing, but would have drained your soul. There are relationships that seem promising but would have broken your spirit. There are paths that appear safe but would have led you far from your calling. You don't always see the danger, but God does. What you thought was rejection may have been a shield. What you thought was disappointment may have been deliverance. That closed door was not punishment, it was grace in disguise. Other times, a closed door is preparation. You aren't ready for what's on the other side yet. Your character needs to grow, your faith needs to deepen, your skills need to develop. If the door opened too soon, it would crush you under the weight of responsibility you weren't built to carry yet. God doesn't deny you to hurt you. He delays to prepare you. He lets doors stay shut until the right time, so when they open, you're ready to walk through with strength and wisdom. What feels like waiting is actually equipping. What feels like delay is actually development. Every closed door is shaping you for the open doors that will matter most. Closed doors also redirect us toward our true assignment. Sometimes we get so focused on what we want that we miss what God is actually calling us to. We think our fulfillment will come from this specific opportunity, but God knows our fulfillment is tied to something else entirely. So He closes the door we wanted to open our eyes to the door we were blind to. He redirects our steps so we don't settle for less than what He intended. Closed doors push us into places we never would have chosen, but end up being the very spaces where our purpose comes alive. What you thought was a setback may actually be a setup for something bigger than you imagined. If you've ever walked through a season of closed doors, you know it can feel lonely, confusing, and even humiliating. People around you may not understand why you're not further along, why the opportunity didn't come, why the plan didn't work. But those are the seasons where faith becomes real. Those are the seasons where you learn to trust God's direction over your own desires. Those are the seasons that teach you resilience and remind you that your worth is not determined by what doors open or close, but by the one who holds the keys. And maybe the most powerful thing about closed doors is that they give God space to show you new ones. When one door closes, your eyes begin to look around. You start to notice opportunities you never would have seen if you were busy chasing what you thought you wanted. Closed doors shift your perspective. They force you to pay attention to the possibilities you overlooked. They open your imagination to things you didn't even think were possible. They remind you that God's creativity is greater than your plans, that His options are far wider than your vision, and that His ways are higher than your ways. God is still working even when your plan isn't. That's the kind of truth that can carry you through the darkest seasons of disappointment. The moments when everything you mapped out has crumbled, the seasons where nothing looks the way you thought it would. We tend to believe that if our plan isn't moving forward, then God must have stopped moving too. We assume that silence means absence and that delays mean abandonment. But the reality is that God never stops working. His hand is still orchestrating, aligning, preparing, and redeeming even in the seasons when your plan is lying in pieces at your feet. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean there isn't momentum. Just because you can't trace His hand doesn't mean you can't trust His heart. When your plan falls apart, it can feel like you're stuck, but God is never stuck. He isn't bound by your deadlines or confined by your limitations. While you're standing in front of what looks like ruins, He's building something beneath the surface. While you're staring at the door that won't open, He's preparing another one that you don't even know exists yet. While you're worried about what didn't work, He's weaving together details that will blow your mind when the timing is right. His activity is not dependent on your awareness. You may not see it, but He's working. You may not feel it, but He's working. You may not understand it, but He's working. There are seasons where the plan doesn't just stop, it shatters. And when it does, it can feel like your whole identity goes with it. You lose the job you thought defined you. You lose the relationship you thought completed you. You lose the opportunity you thought validated you. And suddenly you're left wondering if you have any purpose at all. But what if the loss of the plan is not the loss of purpose? What if God is still weaving your story in ways that are invisible right now? What if the collapse of your plan is actually the construction of His promise? Sometimes He has to tear down what we built so He can raise up what He designed. Sometimes He has to stop our plan from working so we will finally realize His plan never stopped working. Think about the seasons when you prayed for something and nothing seemed to happen. Those moments can feel like the most unproductive times of your life. You're waiting, hoping, expecting, and yet there's no visible change. But often, those are the seasons of deepest growth. The roots are stretching down even if the fruit isn't visible yet. The foundation is being laid even if the walls aren't rising yet. God does some of his best work in the hidden places. He does some of his most powerful preparation in the seasons when you feel overlooked, forgotten, or delayed. What looks stagnant to you may be strategic to him. What feels like wasted time to you may be the very soil where he is planting something that will bear fruit later. One of the hardest things to accept is that God's timetable rarely matches ours. We live in a world of instant results, instant gratification, instant access. But God works in seasons. He works through process. He values transformation more than speed. So when your plan stalls, it doesn't mean his purpose has stopped. It may simply mean the timing is still in progress. God is still aligning people, still opening opportunities, still setting the stage. You might be in a waiting room, but even in the waiting room, he is working behind the scenes. He is never idle. His silence is not inactivity. His silence is strategy. There are also moments when your plan failing is what creates space for his plan to be revealed. As long as your plan is working, you might never question whether it's the right one. As long as you feel like you're in control, you might never surrender. Sometimes it takes the collapse of your plan for you to lift your eyes and notice the path